At age 35, Jake still brings his laundry home to his mom, and he's not alone. More men than ever are stuck in a weird limbo. Biologically adult, emotionally, not so much. We all know the stereotype, the man-child. But here's what almost nobody asks. Why do some guys never really grow up? And what if the real story is way more complicated and way more common than anyone admits? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The man-child isn't just a personality flaw. It's a predictable, psychological trap. And escaping isn't just about manning up. The forces that keep them stuck run way deeper. But before we can break the cycle, we need to see what's really fueling it. Let's start with the secret ingredient that quietly breeds man-children, protection gone wrong. Picture Alex, whose mom solved every problem for him. Lost homework? She called the teacher. Missed the bus? She drove him. By age 28, Alex could ace video games but panicked at the thought of booking his own dentist appointment. The weird part is, these parents aren't lazy. They're over-involved. They want to help. But the result? A grown man who expects the world to be patted. And when it isn't, he freezes. But overprotection is just the warm-up. The real engine behind the man-child? Emotional avoidance. When boys are taught, directly or not, that feelings are dangerous, they never learn to handle them. So later, when adult life gets messy, breakups, job stress, disappointment, they retreat to childhood comforts. Here's what most people miss. It's not that man-children never feel pain. It's that they never learn how to process it. Instead of facing problems, they dodge, distract, or disappear. That pattern hardens with time. And the world isn't exactly helping. Today, adulthood is a moving target. 50 years ago, the average age of first-time dads was 27. Now, it's merely 32. People marry later, move out later, settle into careers later. The old milestones? Optional or just unaffordable. So, the man-child isn't just a personal failure. It's a collective confusion about what adulthood even means now. But let's not sugarcoat it. The consequences are real, especially for the people around them. Partners often end up parenting their adult boyfriends or husbands. The resentment builds. Meanwhile, friends drift away. The man-child becomes the guy people used to know. Even parents who once doted can feel trapped, torn between helping and enabling. Now, flip that around. What's in it for the man-child? Why stay stuck? Short term, it feels safe. No risk, no failure, no pressure to change. But here's the catch. Every comfort zone is secretly a prison. The longer you stay, the harder it is to leave. The outside world seems bigger and scarier every year. Here's where it gets weird. Some man-children succeed, at least on paper. They climb the career ladder, buy houses, even have families, but never outgrow adolescent habits. It's not about age or bank accounts. It's about how you handle discomfort, failure, and responsibility. Most people think the solution is simple. Shame them into growing up. But that almost never works. Why? Shame actually feeds the problem. When you feel unworthy, you're more likely to hide out in old patterns. Real change starts with something far more radical, learning to tolerate discomfort. Every step is a micro win, making a call, apologizing, fixing a mistake. Each one builds real adulthood. But here's the twist. Some traits of the man-child can actually be assets if used wisely. Playfulness, curiosity, and the refusal to take life too seriously? In the right context, that's resilience. The line between childlike and childish is razor thin, and context is everything. So, is the man-child doomed? Far from it. But the escape hatch isn't where most people look. It's not about flipping a switch from boy to man. It's about stacking tiny acts of agency. That means practice failing, face emotions, take uncomfortable action again and again. And if you're close to a man-child, support the struggle, not the avoidance. Cheer on the awkward wins. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Underneath, The man-child is usually terrified of being ordinary, of letting people down, of being alone. That fear, it's universal. The only difference is how we face it. So, next time you spot a man-child, remember, you're seeing a strategy, not a destiny. And if you recognize yourself, you're not broken. You're just overdue for a new strategy. But let's go deeper. Why do some men escape the man-child trap and others never do? Let's rewind to childhood, because here's where the real difference begins. Meet Chris. As a kid, he was allowed to fail. His parents set boundaries, but didn't rush to rescue. At 23, Chris faced heartbreak and job loss. He flailed, but he knew struggle wasn't fatal. Contrast that with Dan, whose parents stepped in at every setback. At 28, Dan's first breakup felt like the end of the world. The difference? Chris learned how to recover. Dan learned how to retreat. It's not about tough love or cold detachment. It's about practicing discomfort with support, not rescue. And it's never too late. The adult brain can still rewire. It just takes more effort and intention. Here's a test. When something goes wrong, do you look for an escape or a solution? Most man-children default to escape at first. But every small solution builds adult confidence. It's slow, awkward, and often messy. But adulthood, like childhood, is trial and error, just with higher stakes. And here's one last curveball. Society secretly rewards the man-child sometimes. Pop culture loves the lovable goofball, the slacker hero, the guy who never grows up. But off-screen, the cost is real. Missed connections, stalled careers, shallow relationships. So if the man-child is everywhere, what's actually normal? Here's the twist. Nobody feels fully grown up. Most of us are faking it, at least some of the time. The difference is what we do next. So maybe the real question isn't, why is he a man-child, but what's one thing you could face today that scares you? Because the line between stuck and growing up isn't age, it's action. And the only way out is through, step by step, discomfort by discomfort. So next time you meet a man-child, ask, what's the story behind the comfort zone, and what would it take to step out? Because the real mystery isn't the man-child. It's why every single one of us clings to something childish, even when we know better. And here's the twist I promised you. The part of us that resists growing up is also the part that can learn, change, and if we're lucky, rediscover real joy. So, what's your next step? And what if the real secret to adulthood is learning how to be brave, scared, and hopeful, all at once? If you want to see how childhood patterns shape everything from ambition to anxiety, don't miss our deep dive into the psychology of birth order, just one click away. But let's get specific. What do these comfort zones actually look like in daily life? One common micro-trap: digital distraction. The average adult man spends nearly 3 hours a day on games, social, and YouTube, more than on chores or even face-to-face conversation. Why? Because digital worlds never ask you to grow up. Your avatar never leaves dirty socks on the floor. But every hour spent escaping is an hour not spent building real-world muscle, literal or emotional. And here's the irony. The more you avoid real life, the scarier it gets. Another curiosity. Even small wins, like learning to cook one meal, can tip the scales toward adulthood. But most man-children never start, because they fear looking foolish. The real trap isn't failure, it's the fear of embarrassment itself. Here's the counterintuitive bit. The people who grow up fastest are often those who fail most publicly and survive. Because every time you endure embarrassment, your fear shrinks and your skill set grows. So, if you want to help someone escape the man-child zone, don't do things for them. Invite them to risk a little embarrassment instead. Let's pull back the curtain on a hidden ally, mentorship. Studies show that men with mentors are 40% more likely to take on new responsibilities by 30. Why? Because mentors model grown-up risk-taking and show that adulthood isn't a solo sport. But here's a missed opportunity. Most men never actually ask for mentorship, because that too feels like admitting weakness. The fix? Normalize asking for help. Not rescue, but real guidance. And here's a paradox to chew on. The men who become grown-ups fastest are often the ones most willing to say, I don't know, can you show me? Let's close a loop. If you're thinking, what if I'm too old to change? Science says otherwise. Neuroplasticity doesn't retire. You can build new adult habits at any age. The catch is, you have to start small and stay awkward. So, the next time you see a man-child, or spot the urge to retreat in yourself, remember, you're not seeing laziness. You're seeing a comfort strategy that's outlived its usefulness. And if you're ready to step out, start here. Pick one thing that scares you. Do it badly and keep going. Awkward is the new brave. Because adulthood isn't a finish line. It's 100 tiny risks, stacked up like building blocks, every single day.